Welcome to the video tutorials for the Editor's Guide to DaVinci Resolve 17. My name is Sherwin, and I'll be walking you through all the lessons in the book. Here's an overview of the lessons that you'll see in the book. There are 10 lessons in total that we'll cover throughout the semester. So please make sure you have all the media files downloaded. This can be found on the Resolve Training website. Each lesson has its own DRP file, which is a DaVinci Resolve project file, and you'll need to relink the media once you load up that DRP. All the media is found in the media folder of the download, and additionally there's a finished DRT file for each lesson. In lesson 7, we are doing compositing in the edit page. In this lesson, we're going to create a multi-layered promo that incorporates composited video, audio, and motion graphics, and text. So this lesson is going to introduce the compositing and animation features available in the edit page. Now, oftentimes now, editors have to do more than just cut picture. They'll have to build some composites and do some animation for motion graphics. So learning how to do all of that stuff in the edit page is going to be a useful tool to have in your tool belt. Okay, so let's go into lesson 7. Let's right click in this empty area and we'll go into import project. Go into our edit media, lesson 7, and we'll open up the DRP. And guess what we're going to have to do? You got it, relink. So I'll click on this relink button and I'll locate it. I'll save this and I'm going to reset my UI layout and bring this back up. All right, so in the timelines bin, we'll make sure we are using the timeline called Disunity Promo Start. If not, you can go into the timelines bin and double click and open it, and let's play and let's hear it.
The rhino has always been such an iconic animal of Africa, and now currently they have been poached to extinction for nothing but their horns.
Okay, so the first thing we want to look at is this interview right here. Okay, you can see that it is handheld, so there's a bit of handheld movement there. So the first thing we want to do is stabilize this clip, and in the edit page you can stabilize shots. Go to the inspector, top right of your window. Let's open that up. In the inspector, you can change different properties of your clip. Let's go down to stabilization and let's click to reveal the parameters. Real simply, just stabilize the shot and click stabilize. So Resolve analyzes the movement in the image and it reduces the movement of the camera. So let's play the interview again and let's take a look. Okay, so it did stabilize the shot, but you can see that there's this weird pulsing going on. I'll see the edges here. It's kind of this weird pulsing. So that imperfection in the stabilization is caused by the different modes of stabilization. These different modes stabilize your shot using different algorithms. So let's go to similarity and hit stabilize. All right. So with this, all right, so the different modes. So perspective enables pan, tilt, zoom, rotation, and perspective stabilization. And that perspective stabilization is causing that weird background. So when you go to similarity, it looks at the image, analyzes it, and uses the pan, tilt, zoom, and rotation to stabilize the shot. And then when you use the most bottom one, the translation, that's just stabilizing the shot using the X and Y parameters. We've changed it to similarity and we've stabilized that shot, but the movement, it's still a bit noticeable, right? You can see some parts of the foreground here. Now to see it a little bit better, we can let's full screen this shot, hit home. So you can full screen by using Control F or Command F on Mac, or hit P. So if you look at that, it looks okay, but there's a little bit of this pulsing going on. All right, so let's try to adjust some of these parameters here with the smooth and strength to make that stabilization a little bit better. So increase the smooth to around 0.9. And then let's bring down the strength to around 0.75, right? And hit stabilize again. So reducing the strength loosens the stabilization slightly, allowing a little bit more of the original camera movement back into the shot. And the higher your smooth value, that reduces the camera movements even further. So let's go into full screen mode. I'll hit home and let's see how that looks. All right, so it's smoother. The jittery movement, the large handheld movements aren't as noticeable. So you can play with this smooth and strength as much as you want and hit stabilize again. You can try different combinations and you can see whatever works for you. I'm okay with this and I'll move on. All right, so we're moving on to editing to different video tracks. So sometimes we've got to layer in a bunch of different videos on top of each other so that we can create a composite. And this is what we're going to do. So we want to have a couple of shots play in the side of the interview shot. And so the first shot that we want to do is in the media bin, and we'll go into the video and we'll go with rifle. So we'll double click this, or you can bring it in. So in this clip, the rifle is fired twice. There's one, and there's a second shot. So what you want to do is make sure that we use part of the shot that is actually before the shot of the rifle, because we have a shot of a rifle right here. So we just want the image of the person holding the rifle, aiming it before they shoot. So we want to avoid the image of the rifle shooting. So we'll back up the playhead by, let's say, 1 second. So we'll move to the marker, and to move to markers, it's shift and up or down arrow. So I'm holding the up and down arrow to move. And then I'm going to move backwards. So I'll hit minus and I'll do 1 second, which is 1. And instead of typing 0, 0, I'll just hit period, which will add 2 zeros. And that's 1 second. And I'll mark an out point. What we're going to do is really back time the edit. So we want to line up this out point with the out point here. All right, so let's go back down here, and we're going to hover over our first clip, and we'll mark it using the X key, and we'll mark the entire clip using the X key. Now we also don't want to have any audio, so we're going to turn off our audio. So everything is in place here. We've got our marks and an out, and then our out point here. And we're just taking the video of it, and we're going to place it on top. There we go. Next thing we're going to do is another editing function called Fit to Fill. Now, Fit to Fill is a 4-point edit where you've got in and out points on the source clip and an in and out on the timeline. And Resolve will automatically calculate the rate of speed adjustment required to make the marked duration of the source clip fit into the marked duration of the timeline. So this is really helpful when you want a particular action to happen within a specific time, such as within a musical phrase or during a voiceover section. So what we're going to do is mark our timeline. This is what we want to do. Again, we're putting clips on top of each other, and then we're going to composite that. Next clip we want is this Rhino clip. So you can double click or just bring it into the source viewer. You can see that there's 20 seconds of in and out already marked here. So there's 20 seconds there, but we need to fit it within this 10-second slot. So we want to put this Rhino clip on top, and we're going to add another video track. And I'm going to move my video 1 to video 3. I can either click and drag my source up here, or so I can press option 1, 2, or 3 to change where I'm patching the source video to my timeline track. So you can see that I'm hitting option 3. Video 1 is now going to video 3 track. If I drag this over and hit fit to fill, so it's going to bring that 20-second into this 10-second marked clip in the timeline. You can see that it has applied a speed effect. So if I right click and look at change clip speed, it's made it faster. All right, so let's take a look. Okay, it's grazing much faster. Looks like normal speed, but I guess these rhinos are really slow. Yep. All right, so next up is scaling and positioning clips. So right now, these clips, the rhino and the rifles, fill the entire frame, but again, we want them to be smaller and fit like a window on the side of the interview clip. So we'll select the rhino clip, and we'll use the on-screen controls to scale and position the clip. So in the lower left corner of our timeline viewer is our on-screen controls. So I'll click this icon to enable it. And this is the drop down also, so you can click on it and see all the different on-screen drop downs that you have control for. All right, so now these control points give you the ability to scale the clip, rotate the clip, and reposition the clip. So I'm gonna first drag from this bottom left to size it down. And I'm gonna reposition this there. And I'll put it in the lower right of the frame. Now, if you try to resize using the handles in the middle, the control points in the middle, you're actually going to unlock the XY and you're going to change the actual aspect of the clip itself. So you can see that this lock here means that if you move, change one of those parameters, the Y and the X are locked. If you unlock it, you can then stretch the X without changing the Y. So I'm gonna size it back down. Okay, let's say that's what I want. You can size it however large or small that you want. But again, it should fit within that lower right quadrant. So we can't really see how this is looking on the interview because we've got the rifle clip. So let's turn off the rifle clip by disabling it. Let's click on the rifle clip and hit D to disable. Okay, so let's see how it goes. All right, it looks like it, that can fit right there for now. Now there are actually some guides that you can turn on to help you with the positioning. So if you go into the view menu, go down to safe area, and we can turn on the safe area. And here are some guides that we can help ensure that, so we can see the image on a regular TV screen. So I'll go back to my Rhino clip and I'll just put it in the corner there. We don't have to be super precise, but it can work. So I'll hit Z to center my frame. So next we're going to make the rifle clip the same size, but we'll position it in the upper right quadrant of the frame. Now, one of the easiest way to do that is to copy the attributes here and paste it onto the rifle clip and then just move it in the Y axis. All right, so I'm going to disable that. Go back to the Rhino clip. I'm going to hit Command C or Control C to copy, or you can right click and copy. Click on the rifle clip and right click and go to Paste Attributes, or you can use the shortcut Option V, and that is Paste Attributes. What we're going to copy and paste onto the rifle clip are the zoom and the position. You can see in this Paste Attributes menu, you can copy a lot of different aspects of it. If there were audio attributes, you can do that. If there are retime effects there, you can do that too. So I'll apply this, and currently, because of the layering, the Rhino clip is on top of the rifle clip. So I have the rifle clip selected. I'm going to scale it up. I'm going to move it up. All right, so let's say this is where we want to put it. You can just put it anywhere in the y-axis and move it there. The other way you can reposition is to drag, so you can constrain the axis by holding Shift and clicking and dragging. So I'll just do it that way. So scaling these two picture-in-picture clips allows us to see the background interview. Now, if we want to animate the picture-in-picture clip or add an effect to them, you can do that easily if you collapse them into what's called a compound clip. Some of y'all may hear it as a nested clip. So the next thing we're going to do is animate these two clips on and off screen. So they're going to start off, come on, and then they're going to scale off again. So we can do that individually, but it might be easier and more efficient to do it as a group, and we'll make a compound clip and then we'll animate the compound clip. So we'll select both of these and we'll choose clip and new compound clip, or you can right click and do new compound clip. And let's name this compound clip PIP, as in picture-in-picture comp. We'll hit create. So now the picture-in-picture comp is a new compound clip. And if you bring it into your source, you can see that it is exactly what is there on those two clips. And it becomes now, instead of two clips on two tracks, one clip on video 2 track. All right, so let's animate this. So we'll go to the very beginning of our timeline. And in our inspector in the video tab, we'll drag the X position until they're out of frame. So we'll drag and position the X till they're out of frame. So we'll start animating it from this point at the beginning. So we're going to add a keyframe. Now to finish our animation, we now need to move to the frame where we want the two clips to land in the frame. So the next thing we want to do is move down 1 second. Now if I use my timecode controls of +1 period, because I have this picture-in-picture comp selected, I'm actually going to move this clip 1 second down. So if I hit, okay, that's not what we want. So I have to deselect, then move the playhead 1 second down. All right, so this is where we want to land. Now this, you can scroll it back, or you can just double click and hit 0, because that's where we want it to go. And it automatically creates a keyframe. So let's move to the beginning of the timeline and let's see how that looks. Okay, done in 1 second. Now the two clips are animated on screen from the right. So next we're going to animate this so the two clips shrink in size. So we'll go back to the place where the animation ends, and to navigate with keyframes, you can hit this arrow, or you can use the bracket keys to navigate. So with the left bracket, you move left to the earlier keyframes. With the right bracket, you move down to the later keyframes. Now we're at the second keyframe where the animation ends. Let's move down 5 seconds. So hit +5 period. And this is where we're going to start our zoom. And we'll hit +1 period and we'll zoom down to 0. So let's see how that looks. All right. See how the two clips zoom in, but they're zooming into the center of the frame? That's because it's zooming to the location of the anchor point of the compound clip. So the anchor point's the location where they're going to zoom and rotate. So it's rotating around that anchor point. Reset that. So if we click, all right, in the inspector menu, let's drag the anchor point to the middle of the two picture-in-picture comps, somewhere around here. So you can see how we're dragging that anchor point. All right, so this looks like it's the middle of these clips. Yep, maybe something like this. So we'll play the zooming animation again, and we'll see the difference. So let's hit the left bracket.
Has always been such an iconic animal of Africa, and now currently they've been poached to.
Okay, it looks better. So now it's zooming into where the anchor point is. Let's change the timing of the animation. Now the way the clips move, the way the clips move in and zoom out like that, it feels pretty rigid, right? It's stop and then it zooms. So it's pretty linear, all of that movement. And what we want to do is change how far that is. Now in your timeline, you can change the timing of the keyframes by clicking at this diamond button. And look, each of these diamonds represent the keyframes. So in the keyframe track, we'll click the second keyframe diamond. You can see it changes into a different icon when you do that. And we'll drag it so that we're about 1 second down. So when the tooltip tells you it's 1 second and we're there. So that indicates we're moving the position by 1 second. So let's return the, go to the beginning and let's see how that animation is. Much slower. Okay. So that looks better. And let's move some of the animation, right? We can highlight both of those keyframes and move those down. So we'll drag those until it says 2 seconds. There's 1 and about 2. Let me delete this marker here. Accidentally created a marker there, and we'll just need 1. Okay, that's fine enough. Next, we want to deselect those by, I just clicked away, and I'll move this down another second. All right, so much longer animation.
And now currently they've been poached to extinction.
And the zoom out is slower. So now that we've got our timing okay, like the speed of it, the way in which the animation starts to move is really linear. And so we're going to change the animation of it. So we'll smooth that out. So let's go back to the beginning of the timeline and I'll hit home. So the images are off screen, so we don't really need to mess with the animation of the first keyframe, but we'll go to the second keyframe. So you can use the shortcut or use the arrow. Let's right click the red keyframe on the position parameter. So right click this keyframe and you get the ability to change the way it smooths. So right now it's linear, then we can change ease in. So then when you do that, it will then ease into this final spot.
The Rana has always been such an iconic.
All right, did you see how that eased in? So let's go back to the linear movement.
The Rana has always
And
been
it
such an iconic.
stops abruptly, and let's change that to ease in. You can see that these change also. All right, so there we go.
The Rana has always
It
been
smooths
such an
it
iconic
in.
animal.
So ease in is only available if you've got a keyframe to the left of the selected keyframe, and it affects the acceleration plane to the selected keyframe. If you have any keyframes to the right of the selected keyframe, you're going to have an option to ease out that will adjust the acceleration when you're playing from the selected keyframe. Now, if you have keyframes on both sides of your selected keyframe, you're going to have the option to ease in and out. And that's going to affect both sides of the keyframe simultaneously. Now, it comes in pretty smooth, but let's try to see if we can make it even smoother. So to change the amount of easing being applied, you'll need to adjust the motion path in the viewer. So let's press the, let's jump back to the second keyframe. So left square bracket. And at the bottom of the timeline viewer, make sure the transform on-screen control is still enabled, which it is. Now with them enable and active, the motion path is visible in the viewer. So this represents the motion path of, or the compound clip. Now at the current keyframe position, the viewer shows two handles on the motion path. The larger outer handle on the right, that allows you to modify the shape or the curvature of the path. So if I pull it out this way, you can see that it is changing the curvature. The smaller middle handle controls the acceleration of the animation. So let me undo this, and I'll click and drag this. You can see I'm changing the acceleration of that animation. So if I drag it all the way to the keyframe, it increases the amount of smoothness applied to the animation coming into the keyframe. So that's indicated by the dots getting closer together. So that's smoothing it over there. If I go the opposite way, it's going to smooth on that right side coming earlier in the shot. So if we move it to the left closer to the keyframe, it will start smoothing it that way. Okay, so let's go to the home.
The rhino has always been such an iconic animal.
All right, let's make a smoother beginning of the zooming animation. So let's go to the beginning of the zoom. So this animation is more of a temporal rather than a spatial keyframe. Now the acceleration curve has to be adjusted using the clip's animation curve controls in the timeline instead of the motion path. So let's go down to the clip and let's click on this icon, which will bring us our animation curve control. In the lower right corner of that, click the button. All right, so we want to change the zoom animation. So let's click on this arrow for the drop down and let's make sure we only see the zoom X and Y. So we are just looking at the zoom X. So we'll click on the first of the zoom X keyframes. So this is the first one, and we'll do an ease out button, which is on the top left. So this is the ease out. You can see that is then changing it from a very straight line to a curve. You got Bezier handles now. So you can use these to adjust the speed of the animation start. So let's drag that Bezier handle to the right to slow the start of the animation. All right, how about that? All right, so let's take a look at that animation.
To extinction for nothing.
All right, did you see how slowly it started and then it quickly zoomed out or zoomed away? All right, so you can play with this however you want to adjust, and you can actually go in a different route.
To extinction for nothing. To extinction.
So when you're happy with what it is, Let's click the buttons to hide the animation curve in the keyframe track. So I'm happy where it is. Let's hide that. And we'll also turn off the on-screen controls. You can click this button here, or you can also use the shift and the tilde button, which is above your tab and below the escape key. So that toggles on and off your on-screen controls. Next up, we're going to open up a compound clip to do some adjustments inside of it. To make any changes to the clips inside of it, we have to actually open up the compound clip in its own timeline. We can do it in a couple different ways. I'll show you both. Let's go into the timeline view options and open up the stacked timelines. And we'll choose the clip and we'll go to open in timeline. Alternatively, you can just right click on the compound clip and open in timeline. And it brings up a new timeline, but it's not an actual timeline. It's just opening up this compound clip in its own timeline. All right. Let's say we want to stabilize the rifle clip just a bit. And I actually want to make this shot look as if it were shot on a tripod. So there's actually no movement. So I'll click camera lock, which, like it says, it locks the camera. So you can't do any other parameters or adjust any parameters here. So I'll stabilize this and let's see how locked off this shot is. It's really locked off. It's really does look like it was shot on a tripod. Cool. So let's stabilize both these clips. Let's go into the Rhino clip and let's stabilize that also. To see what it looks like before, you can just click and turn off the stabilization. You can see that it turn it back on. See, it's much more stable. You can use these clips to practice working with the stabilization tool. You can try all these different options that you want to see how that affects the results. If you want to reset the stabilization, just simply click this reset button and it will reset that stabilization. So I'll smooth out this stabilization. Okay, so we can return to the full timeline. We'll close the compound clip timeline tab. So with that, you can see that the stabilization is in both. This is locked off and the Rhino clip is much smoother. Now, because the clips inside the compound clip have changed, the associated compound clip that's in the bin and used in the timeline, that's also updated. The compound clips saved to a bin have a live link to the compound clip edited in the timeline. Therefore, it takes up all of the same changes that you do when you're working within the compound clip. So the next thing we want to do is show how to crop your clips. We'll select the interview clip in the timeline and we'll turn on the on-screen controls pop-up. I'll use the Shift tilde key. And I'm going to change this into the crop tool. So this now allows me to crop my image. So I can click on these handles here and it's going to crop my image. So we'll drag the handle on the right edge of the on-screen controls just beyond the left side of the Rhino. So if you can't grab it, you can zoom out a little and then, so we'll have a little bit of black space here. And we'll use the, we'll crop the bottom so it's aligned with the bottom of this Rhino clip. And we'll align it with the top. And then we'll crop it inside title safe. So this fits well with the composition of this image. But the position of the interview now no longer works. So what we'll have to do is change the positioning inside of the crop. Initially, we would probably have to move this and then change the crop again. But there's a nice feature in the crop menu that allows you to retain your image position. So I'll click on retain image position. And now if we move into the transform controls, the positioning, it allows me to change the positioning of the image within that cropped portion. So let's bring it there. Okay, so that looks good. So the retain image position option, it overrides the default order of when the cropping is applied to the image. So the normal order of operations applies the transformation settings to the clip before applying the crop. So even if the transform controls were adjusted after the crop, the result being you would have to position the image first and then crop to get what you want. Now, using the retain image position option means that cropping is applied to the clip first and then before the transform setting, resulting in an easier way to achieve the desired result. So if I select retain image position, it has now moved the entire crop. So pull it back. There we go. Next, we're going to create an animated background. So let's create a new bin and call it textured background. And with this bin selected, we're going to create a new timeline and we'll call this textured background. So we're going to create our own textured background using a Fusion generator. So we're going to use that background to fill in this rather boring black space. So we're going to create a new animated background. So let's go into the effects library and we're going to look for a Fusion generator. So we're going to go into the generators and then we're going to go into the noise gradient and we're going to bring it into our timeline. So let's hit play. I'm going to turn this on-screen control off and back to transform off. So this is just a bunch of noise, a random noise pattern that it's generating. And let's change this duration to 10 seconds. So let's look at the different controls in the inspector. So these controls are the same as what you would see if we went to the Fusion page. So we're going to use this to create a custom background for our picture-in-picture composite. Now first we're going to need a little bit more texture to play with. So let's increase the scale parameter to about 6. All right. There's a little bit more movement there. So the amount of noise is increased. So let's go into the gradient tab, the center. And this is where we can change the properties of this gradient. So let's change the gradient type to linear. So that's reflected by the gradient color controls in the inspector. So this gradient right here at the top is black, and then this white to the right is at the bottom. Now this start and end parameter, they don't really follow the same sort of values as we see in the edit page because this is using the Fusion coordinate system. So it starts at 0.5. You can see where I'm changing it. The start is in the middle and this Y is at the very top. Okay, so we will reset that. So we'll click the start Y parameter all the way till it's about 0.4. So we're going to go back down and drag it till it's, let's say, 0.4-ish. All right. So the start of the gradient starts much lower. All right. So this is the start of the gradient. And so this is starting it much lower and it quickly goes to white. So let's add a little bit of color to the noise. So let's click the triangle on the right side of the gradient color bar. This one. That's right. You can see that this is kind of white and the triangle here, the selected triangle turns white when you've selected it and it changes the color. We're selecting this triangle and we're going to add some color to that. So let's hit that triangle here and let's select something that's, you know, in the bluish range. Something light blue maybe? You can play that. All right, so it looks like some sort of fog. So this looks good so far. And what we want to do is add a little bit more of a blur to it. So let's get to the Resolve Effects and go into the Open Effects and go into the Filters, and we're going to add a Zoom blur. So what we're going to do is make it look like there's a bunch of rays, like a shining blue ray coming from the bottom. So let's click the Effects tab, and there are the parameters for our zoom blur. So let's change the position of the Y to 0.02, and then the zoom amount quite a bit to 1.3. So we'll do a very big zoom blur, right? So even though the zoom amount slider only allows you to increase the parameter to 1.0, you can increase it further by clicking and dragging in the value field, or just type it in. So now this looks a little bit more like some sort of interesting background texture. All right, so it's kind of shimmering in the background. It's kind of a cool sort of fog, hazed light. So now we just need to copy and paste it into the correct timeline. So we'll select the noise generator and press Command C, and we'll go back to the timeline, Disunity promo start. We want this to be in the background, so it has to go on this track, on this video 1 track below the interview. Select these two. Now we don't want to move and select this audio track, so I'm going to hold the Option and highlight, so it just highlights the tracks that I want. And with Option still held, I'll move these two clips up the track by hitting just up. So holding Option and hitting up and down arrows allows you to move these clips up and down your tracks. So we'll go back to the beginning of the timeline and we'll hit Control V to paste overwrite our background.
The rhino has always been such an iconic animal of Africa, and now currently they've been poached to extinction.
So using the noise generator for this background and understanding all the different ways of changing parameters and applying effects to it will really give you abilities to create some backgrounds and, you know, different types of motion graphics for your shot. You can feel free to go back to the noise gradient inspector and just start changing different parameters. So the composite that we're doing is working, you know, fine, but adding a slight fade to the clips on the right and a soft drop shadow to all 3 picture-in-picture clips, that will add a nice finishing touch. Now, as compound clips act and function just like a regular clip, you can add transitions and resolve effects to a compound clip just as you would to any other clip. Now, this is especially useful since it saves having to add a bunch of instances of an effect to each of these clips individually. So we'll add a fade in and out to the compound clip. So you can click on the clip and go into Timeline, Add Transition, or hit Command T, and that adds a fade in and out on your clip. There's a fade in, fade out. Now, let's say we want to make these transitions longer. We can manually control it, but we can actually Command click both of these clips, Command or Control if you're on PC. And let's hit Command D to open up, or Control D on Windows, the transition window, so the duration. So let's type in 2 for 2 seconds. So now we have a longer cross dissolve,
The Rana has always been such an iconic
longer fade in, and a longer fade out.
but their horns.
So next we'll add a drop shadow to all 3 clips using another compound clip and an open effects filter. So what we're going to do is select these 2 clips and create a new compound clip. So we'll call this PIP, picture-in-picture opener. So let's go into the effects library and look for the drop shadow effect. So you can go search through, or you can just click and type in drop. And there it is. It's in the Resolve Effects Stylize. And let's put this all on the picture-in-picture opener. And there you can see that there's already a drop shadow effect, but let's customize it. So in the Effects tab, increase the shadow strength to about 0.7. So shadow strength to about 0.7. And we'll change the drop distance to about 0.02. And we'll decrease the blur to 0.3. So you can see the actual shadow a little bit better. So you can see how that adjusts. It's easy to make any changes to the drop shadows at any point because it's one set of controls on one filter applied to one clip. All right, so next up we are going to be working with traveling mattes. Now, traveling matte refers to a matte that changes over time, and that is a way to composite multiple images together. Now, we could have done this in the color or the fusion page, but now we can do this in the edit page. So let's dive down and let's create a traveling matte. So in this example, we're going to use a text plus generator to create the traveling matte. All right, so we're going to our effects library, going to effects, and in the titles, I'm going to pull out the text plus. And because this is in and out on our first part, let's just clear that in and out. All right, now it's to our second. All right, so let's type in a few texts. So we're going to create a few titles from this. The first one's going to say Africa's. So we'll keep this as open sans, but we'll go to extra bold. So thick block letters. One of the cool things in Resolve, you can hover over text and it will highlight and update with that change in the font. All right, so back to this, and we'll make this pretty large, up the size. Now we want to make sure this stays within our safe area, so we'll go back into our view and we'll turn on our safe areas. All right, so we'll bring this back down just a bit so it goes inside our safe area. So the text needs to fill the screen more. So at the top, so we'll click on the settings tab and we'll unlink our zoom controls so that we want our Y to get stretched out. So we'll stretch it out close to that 3 value. So this scales our text vertically, which fills our timeline viewer better. So this has created the first part of our traveling matte. Now I'm going to have to tell Resolve that I want to use this to composite with our herding shot. So let's go down to the composite mode in our text plus title. Now, because the text plus generator contains an alpha channel, so the text can be placed above other video clips, we're going to use that as a starting point. So in the composite pop-up, we're going to choose alpha. So scroll all the way down and we'll choose alpha. So we're telling the composite mode to be alpha. So nothing seems to change, right? So to make this work as a matte, you need to edit another clip under the track above it and change its composite mode to foreground. So for this, we're going to create another texture using the noise generator. So from the generators category, we'll pull out another noise gradient. So we'll pull out actually both of these clips so that they fill the rest of the hurting clip. So I'll highlight both of them and I'll drag that out. So in the generator controls of the video inspector, let's change the detail to 10. And then our seethe rate to 0. So seethe rate all the way down to 0. So increasing the detail adds more noise to the generator, right? As you can see, brings more noise. And the seethe rate controls how fast the noise moves. So with 0, we just did something that doesn't move. So if we change the seethe rate, you can see that it changes. So going back to 0, it's a still one. So we want this to be a bit more stylized. So we're going to drop on a stylized filter in the Open Effects. We'll go into the Open Effects category in the sidebar and scroll down to Resolve Effects Stylized Group. Open Effects, Filters, and we'll go to the Stylized Group. And what we're looking for is Pencil Sketch. So we'll click on the effects inspector and look at the control, and we'll reduce the stroke strength. So now we'll go into the effects to change the open effects. We'll reduce the stroke strength down to 0.7. And the length all the way down to 0. You can see how it changes. And we'll change the tone adjust amount to 1/2. And really, you can just play with this just to see what works best. But again, what we're going to do is composite this with our text. And we don't want this to animate, so we'll turn this off. So now this looks kind of more like some sort of rocky surface. So we'll switch to the video inspector for the noise generator. So the video inspector. And we'll go back down to the settings. And we're going to change this composite mode to foreground. Do you see what happened? When the text plus is chosen as an alpha mode, the noise gradient, or whatever you put on top of it as the foreground, gets used as the texture or fills in the white parts of the text. If I wanted the generator clip to appear outside the text, you can change the text plus clips composite mode to inverted alpha. So alpha goes inside, or the white part of that shot. Inverted is the other side, inverts the alpha. So the next thing we want to do is start changing some of these titles. And so now that we've got a textured feel to the text, let's put some of the finishing touches. So we'll start by adding a couple of edit points to change the titles. We'll shift click the auto select control for any of the audio tracks. We'll shift click and we'll disable it for all of them. We'll use the shortcut Option F1 or Alt F1 on Windows to disable the auto select for video one. So Option F1 turns it off. You can see right here. So Option F1 turns it off, F2 turns off video 2. And we'll position our playhead at the start of this timeline, and we'll go down 3 seconds, 3 plus period. We'll do a blade all, so Command B, and that edits just these two up here. So we'll move down 3 seconds. Add edit. We'll select the first of the 3 text plus clips in the timeline, and in the video inspector, we'll change the title to saving. And then the third clip, we'll change that to rhinos. Next thing we want to do, so we want to alternate some of the backgrounds of the noise so that the saving Africa's rhinos all look different. So we want to change the background so that the texture inside the text looks different every time we change to a different word. So saving Africa's rhinos should have a different texture to it. So what we want to do is change the seethe so that it looks a little bit different for each one. That looks different. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is just simplify these text and these titles a little bit. So we'll just highlight these and create a compound clip, and we'll call it saving. And we'll compound clip this again. Africa's. And finally, we'll go with rhino. Okay, so notice how these are all endpoints. When we've created a compound clip, it creates a finite handle or end to your clip. So we can't do any transitions because that's the end of our clips. So what we can do is add handles to the clips inside of this. So let's go into each clip. So we'll go into open in timeline. And what we're going to do is change the clip duration and extend it. So you can highlight both, and we'll go with Command D or Alt D to bring up our duration window. You can quickly click the preset of 15 seconds and change it. So now it's 15 seconds. And we'll go back to this Disunity promo start. You can do the tab, or down at the bottom, you can double click this to go back to the timeline. And now we have some handles to move. We'll do that to the rest of these clips. All right, so what we can do now is highlight these 3, and I'm going to hit T to go into trim mode, and I'm going to slip each clip so that they have some handles for all of them. While I'm still in trim mode, I'll highlight these 2 and then hit Command T to add a transition. I want to further customize these transitions, so I'll go back into my selection mode and hold Shift or hold Command and click on both of them, and now I can change the transition type. So we'll change it to push, we'll keep it to 1 second, and we'll change the preset to push up. Let's add some motion blur, and we'll do an ease in and out. And now that we've got our transitions in between the clips, we're going to fade this title sequence in and out. So we're going to add a 15 frame cross dissolve to the beginning of this clip, 15 frames. So we'll hit this transition, we'll do 15 frames, and we'll add a 5-second transition out. So we'll add a 5-second transition out. And finally, we'll select all 3 of these clips, and we're going to drop a drop shadow filter on it. Now, compound clips provide a really powerful way to make changes to multiple clips. Adjustment clips are another method. Using an adjustment clip, you can apply effects to multiple clips in the timeline without collapsing them into a compound clip. This clip doesn't include any content of its own. When you edit it into a timeline track, any effects or adjustments applied to the adjustment clip are passed on to all clips on the timeline beneath it. So let me show you what that means. In the effects library, we'll close out this. So we'll go into the effects category and we will pull out the adjustment clip. And let's do this so it covers all of the clips. We'll pull in video 3 and we'll extend it to everything. We'll go into the open effects and we'll add an effect onto this adjustment clip. So right now nothing looks like it's changed. So we'll add a filter and we'll go into the vignette. So I'll just type it in. I'm going to drop this onto the adjustment clip. Dropping on the vignette onto our adjustment clips applies the vignette to the entire adjustment clip and everything below it. So what we're going to do is to customize this because it's definitely a little too much. So we'll go into the effects and let's change the softness to 0. We'll increase our size to around 0.8. And the shape of it, the anamorphism, to 2.5 or so. So it's pronounced, but really at the edge of our frames. And then we'll reset the softness to back to 0.5. So the effect is applied to all of the clips on our timeline. Now, if we wanted to see the effect of our vignette, we can turn it on and off. You can change the softness or the style of the vignette however you want. Go ahead and play with it. There's a lot of visual filters and effects that you can do in the edit page. Now, we're going to move on to using Fairlight FX in the edit page, which are audio effects. So first, we're going to discover how this Fairlight FX can be used on the edit page to enhance the gunshot effect on audio track 2. So let's go into the Fairlight FX. And let me turn this search off. I'm going for echo. And I'll drop it onto this gunshot. And when I do that, it brings up a window that we can use to change parameters. So it would be nice to hear this gunshot echo a few times as the next clip is coming onto the screen. So let's lower the delay to 0 and the feedback to 50, and we'll go 100% wet. So meaning we're hearing 100% of the effect. So let's close this up and let's play it. All right, so the echo lasts only for the length of the clip. Let's hear that again. So that clip is done. So we'll select the out point of this clip and pull it out, but we can't because that's the end of the handles. So we need to find a different way of extending this shot so that the echo can continue on after it. So we're going to have to use a compound clip. So let's remove the Fairlight effects from this audio clip, and we're going to create a compound clip and extend it. So we'll create a compound clip. I'll cancel that. I'll go into the audio, make sure that the compound clip goes into the audio, and I'll do gunshot extended. All right, so still can't extend this, but what we can do is go inside. Now again, this can't get extended, but we need to find a way of extending it. So we can use an adjustment clip and just extend it. All right, so let's just go back to the promo start again. Get back to our echo. So Fairlight FX, echo, drop it on. And let's redo the effect. Let's have a bit of feedback So now we can extend it out.
Nothing but their walls.
Great. So this works. We can hear the entire echo over and over as the gunshot is extended. So the next thing we want to do is render in place. So now that we've done our multi-layered keyframed opener, it's a pretty complex timeline with a lot of stuff going on, and you can see that it takes a little bit to render. So one of the things that we can do is to simplify this by creating a mixdown using the DaVinci Resolve render in place feature. So with all the clips in the timeline selected, we'll hit Command A to select everything. So let's create a new compound clip. And we'll call it Opener Mixdown. So in the timeline, we'll right click the Opener Mixdown, and then we'll do a render in place. So we'll leave all these at the default and just hit render. And this is going to ask me where I want to save my file. So I'm going to save this next to my media file. So I'm in my media. And then it's going to render into a new self-contained video file. So the new video file is used in place of the compound clip in the timeline, and it's added to the currently selected bin, which is our video bin. So using render in place is a fairly cool tool to have. So it's allowing you to flatten some of these really complex things that you could be doing into a single video file that's easier for Resolve to play back. So even though you now have created a mixdown version, you can still adjust it. So in the timeline, right click the Opener Mixdown Render 1 movie. So this, right click, and we can choose the decompose it to original. So we can go back to what it was before. So now it's the Opener Mixdown compound clip. So we can then go inside the Opener Mixdown and make any changes that we need to make. All right, so that is lesson 7, all about compositing in the edit page. And a lot of it is doing some motion graphics work and light compositing. All right, I hope this has been helpful. Thanks for watching.